Now let's move to question 4, which is the Monte Carlo question. By now you've probably noticed there's a bold blue font, and anything that I change for the actual exam will be the blue font. All these other fonts will remain the same. So you'll get a different company in question 1. Now of course you'll get different files to download in all the questions, but all the instructions will be the same unless they're in this bold blue font. And so when we download this file, it's going to have some data in columns K and L. It's going to have 3 different drivers that we get to sample from, in this case, a normal distribution. And I'll just go ahead and say everything on the exam will be from a normal distribution with some mean and standard deviation that we're given, in this case in column K and L. And from that, we'll want to run a Monte Carlo simulation with 1,000 iterations, determine the probability of something. In this case, it's achieving an average equity valuation per share of $40. In addition to finding that probability, we want to make the 3 charts that we typically make on this kind of problem: convergence, cumulative probability, in this case down to the right, and a histogram, in this case using the bins provided. So let's get started. The first thing to do is make these drivers stochastic. So we'll use norm.n for that. Sample a random number, give it a mean and a standard deviation. Since we're going to sample from a normal distribution for all 3, we can just copy paste and make sure that we're in fact doing it the right way, which we are. And now we're ready to simulate. So we're going to need 1,000 iterations, and we're going to want to find the value per share for each iteration. This is data table on a blank cell, so let's color our blank cell yellow. Grab our valuation per iteration, and it says in the problem to use the average equity value per share. And then we need to count from 1 to 1,000. We could drag this thing down, or we could say, I guess we'd have to do 1, 2 if we're going to drag it down, equals this plus 1, copy that cell. I guess it would be 1,000, it would be in 1004, should get me there. So F5 to go to in 1004, Control Shift up and paste. And that counted us up to 1,000, but we don't want to calculate that every time, so let's paste it on as values. And now we're ready to simulate with the data table. We don't have any row input cells, but we have a column input cell right here, the blank cell. And now we have 1,000 different samples of stock price. Looks like our bold formatting carried across a little further than we expected it to. So I'll unbold all those. I guess before I made the data table, we could have formatted that as the output and these as the inputs, and it would have given us more confidence that we were selecting the right cells to make the data table, but won't really matter for this. Now we can calculate our running average and our rank on the stock price. The running average is just the average with the first cell held absolute, and the rank is percent rank inclusive. So from within this array, absolute, where does this value fall? Now we could do it here or we could do it later, but we're going to need a chart that goes down and to the right. And so if we do it this way, when we get a relatively low price, it's going to have a relatively low rank, and a relatively high price is going to have a relatively higher rank, and that's not going to get us down and to the right. So we need to do the 1 minus trick. And we knew it's 1 minus because stock price is a valuation, which is favorable. We want it to be higher. So the higher it gets, then the higher the stock valuation gets, the lower our probability of meeting it. Those are all really close. I'm wondering if I did something wrong. Of course, I'm trying to find the rank of the running average instead of the value per share. Okay, don't do what I do. Do what I should do. All right, so a low price of $28 has a relatively high probability of achieving. A relatively high price, up over 40, let's say 43, has only a 4% chance of exceeding. So while we're thinking that way, could make the chart, but first let's do a formula like this down here to get the main answer to the question. 1 minus percent rank from within this array of this number. So we have a 21% probability of getting a valuer per share goal of reaching our goal of 40. And let's see a picture of that. Let's take the rank versus the valuation per share. So if this is our probability, then this is our value per share. And so yeah, it says we have, I think we were trying to get to 40. It says we have a little bit less than a 20% chance of getting to 40. And that shows right at 20. I would hit F9, but my recording software will stop recording when I hit F9. But one thing I could probably do is come over here to formulas and calculate now. That's the same as hitting F9. And then I can see how much that changes. So let's see how much this answer changes. Calculate now. Now all you need to do is leave the answer in the spreadsheet. But if we were doing a Canvas quiz where I asked you, you'd just pull that number out and use it. Okay, we need 2 more charts, and then I think we'll be finished. Let's see. We ran the Monte Carlo. We determined the probability. Create 3 charts. We did our cumulative probability chart. And we're not asked to do a goal line or a value at risk line, so we don't need to do that. But we do need to do a convergence chart and a histogram. So let's do a convergence chart with the running average. And remember, we plot that just against the number of iterations. And it looks like it's converging. I'm going to go back to formulas and calculate now. You could just hit F9 if you're not using video software. Looks like that's working, so we'll call that our convergence chart. And show that we are plotting running average against iterations. So please label the chart so I'll know what you were drawing. And the only thing remaining is to calculate frequency. Now, if you don't have Office 365, you need to select these cells when you type frequency. And look at your data array and your bins. And do a Control-Shift-Enter. If you do have Office 365, then all you need to do is go to that cell, type the same formula, and it will automatically know to fill this array for you. So we now have our bins and our frequency, and when I'm drawing a column chart, I seem to have the best luck if I just select the columns first and insert a 2D column chart and then select the series and come back. Select the series and come back and add the X. But you'll want to practice this before the exam so that you know that you can do it quickly. And then you can show the frequency. And value per share. or whatever other metric I ask you to try to evaluate on the exam. Shouldn't try to talk and type at the same time. So we have our 3 charts and we have our probability, which I believe is all we were asked to do. And right around 10 minutes. And that's problem 4. I have decided not to include an additional problem after the 4th problem. I'll get that out in an announcement.